Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for Closing the Wealth Gap. The one show, maybe the only show that shows you how to close the wealth gap in your own life with the man who's done it for many, our wealth coach himself, Tyrone French. Hey, Tyrone.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Closing the Wealth Gap. I'm your host, Tyrone French. I'd like for you to do me a favor. I want you to download my free mobile app into your phone. It's easy to install. The instructions are right there. Just go to TyroneFrenchApp.com or text Tyrone French to 36260. Again, text Tyrone French to 36260. Or you can go to my website, TyroneFrench.com. That's TyroneFrench.com. Or give us a call. Call Tyrone at 877-296-5192, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a recorded message. Leave a message, even if it just cuts me out that you didn't like the show. Leave us a message.
Tyrone, I hate it.
And I will respond to your phone call.
Oh, wow.
And that being said, we're going to get into this week, this topic this week with my good friend, Paul Roberts, and we're going to talk about how it's better to build than to tear down. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing fantastic. And this comes from your last show. If you haven't, go listen to the last show with your friend. Very inspirational show, Thomas L. White, who you served with in Guam, who also, while he's serving the country, is playing on the basketball team for the military, building morale, and goes all the way up to
Military Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and in that period of time, got to play with people like David Robinson. When we forget when David Robinson came out of the Navy,
right?
They decided he did have to go serve his time after the Naval Academy, and did so, and then played obviously.
Hey, here's the thing: a lot of people don't know about David Robinson. He was good enough to play in the Navy on the All NBA, the All Navy team.
Yeah. Right. Well, Thomas White, you're saying, yeah, and David Robinson both.
I'm being facetious, but yeah. I mean, that caliber of play in the military to keep the morale up for the troops. That's just a part of the military.
People don't understand there are other things in the military. Like I know somebody was in the band or the orchestra, whatever it is, marching bands and orchestras. So they have other things there. They have radio stations, and stuff and everything. They have other jobs you can do. So you're doing your regular job, and then you have this other thing because they do want to have entertainment. They do want to have morale boosters. They want to help recruitment. So they bring in people and let them do things other than their technical skill.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, even aboard aircraft carriers. I mean, the ship is so large that basically they have their own television station.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I've heard. Well, I thought this was very touching because in the troubled times that we're living, we seem to be in a tear down mode. We're tearing down, people are trying to tear down parts of the federal government. We're tearing up alliances. We're tearing down our cities and at each other again here. We're tearing things up. We're in a tear up mode here. And that seems always to me so much easier than what comes next. You're saying maybe it's easier to build than to just tear down. And this could be your own life. This could be your family. We instantly tear down relationships. We tear down jobs. We tear ourselves down. I can't do this. We seem to burn things down easily, but building is hard for us. You're saying it shouldn't be.
Well, here's the thing. What I want people to understand is, and this is, it took me a long time to understand this myself, but I used to be on this thing about duality, hot, cold, winter, spring, up, down,
good, bad,
but it's all one cycle. It's all, hot and cold. There's still temperatures. You just have different degrees or different frequencies of that same temperature. So the same way that you're building or you're tearing down, there has to come a point where you're building up as well. It's just like looking at results. A lot of people will focus on the result, meaning that I want to make more money.
Right.
But you got to look at the cause. What service are you willing to provide to make more money?
Right.
So again, it's all a part of the same paradigm. It's all a part of the same structure.
As the Chinese would say, yin and yang here. There's two sides of the coin here.
But if you focus on one side, that's where you're going to stay.
And that's what we do all the time. We focus on the negative. And too often we don't talk about the positive. Or it's the opposite. I know people that are always just oh, Sonny, everything's great, everything's wonderful. And it's like, no, there are problems. You got to face that too. You got to have a reality-based approach, but you can't be negative all the time either.
But that's where the balance comes in.
Yeah.
See, the balance, when you look at, even if you look at a number line, you got on the left side, you got the positive numbers.
Right.
And on the right side, you got the negative numbers.
Yeah, right.
But on the negative numbers, you're going to see a sign in front of it with a negative sign.
Right.
But right smack dab in the center, you're going to find a 0.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the balance.
Yeah.
That's the balance.
You know, I'm making a face because this was my late father's favorite word, balance. Everything is balance in life. Don't eat too much, don't eat too little. Don't work too hard, don't work too little. Don't spend too
Right.
much, don't spend too little. You know, everything was about finding that balance in your life there.
We call it, another word is equilibrium.
Yeah.
Finding the equilibrium. But here's the thing. You cannot stay in the balance. You can't stay in the equilibrium. Mm-hmm. It's like look at transitions as far as
I hate that. We want to get to 0. We want to get to the equilibrium and stay there. I don't want the boat to rock, but all of a sudden it starts rocking again.
If things are too hot, you'll burn up.
Yeah.
If things are too cold, you'll freeze.
Yeah.
So look at our weather. We really have 2 seasons: winter and summer.
Yeah.
Fall and spring. That's the equilibrium.
When I was in the
That's the
Midwest, we
balance.
call it livable and unlivable. There was a couple months you could live, the rest of the time it was unlivable.
Yeah, but again, fall and spring are transitions. They're transitional, going from or going to winter and summer. And we all live in these environments, you know, mentally, physically. But if we can't articulate these things, then you feel trapped. And now you're being conditioned by circumstances
Right.
versus internalizing things and having an understanding that life is meant to be lived from the inside out and not from the outside in. We dictate our lives. We dictate to society. We are creators.
Somebody once said, you can't change what happens to you, but you can change how you react.
100% of the time. 100% of the time. The thing is, we choose based on what's familiar to us and what's comfortable to react a certain way based on where we are.
Then why do we feel, let's start with our own lives, we have no choice? I was born, there's 3 strikes against me. Thomas White, your friend, was talking about, he didn't go into detail, but it sounded like he had a pretty tough, rough life growing up in Detroit, where I grew up. He grew up in a tougher part than I did, I'm sure. And, you know, his only way out was basketball in the military. That was the only path he could see forward where he didn't end up bad.
But again, it was a choice. Matter of fact, he tells his story how he was walking down this alley as a kid and he saw this old beat up basketball in a trash can. That's what started his career.
He picked it up
for basketball. And it led him, just that chance experience of finding this old beat up basketball in a trash can led him to the Military Hall of Fame.
So why is it that we don't see those things or don't pick them up? We walk right by them, or if we see it, we say, I can't do that.
Well, sometimes we're not living in the now. Sometimes we're living in the past, and we're living in the future.
Right. Always focus on what happened before and how it's screwed me over forever, or the hope, the fantasy of what's going to come next year.
But here's the thing. Why build on something in your past that you can never change?
No, that's true. It's done. It's there.
But you choose to build on that experience. Even though it happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, you're still building on that foundation. Instead of living life in the now and saying, okay, I'm going to change direction. This is what I choose to do now. And if you make that choice to say, this is what I'm going to do now, that becomes a different reality. That becomes a different habit. And as you being consistent with that thing, now you got a totally different life.
And you love to talk about almost a different frequency, like you're actually changing reality somehow. You're tuning into a different frequency. You're choosing to hear something that everybody else can't hear.
Well, here's the thing. If you're driving down the 405 freeway,
right,
and you're listening to country and western music, doesn't mean that jazz is not
Oh,
in the airways.
It's not
Doesn't mean
coming
that
through.
classical music, that's right, it's not in the airways. It's just you're not tuned into it.
Oh,
So some people are tuned into misery and despair, and they're being hopeless. And that's what's coming in through their speakers, which is validating their position, because they're just waiting for something bad to happen to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, see, look, I knew it. I knew this was too good to be true."
Yeah, right.
Versus, there's more good things happen to you on a daily basis than bad things.
I met years ago a group of immigrants. I had a little bar and we sold it to some guys. They all came out, looked very poor. They're from Cambodia,
Okay.
and they had suffered through. Go watch the old movie, The Killing Fields, where the communists came in. And
Yes,
just
I remember that.
pushed everybody. They lived in the cities. Their dad was like a doctor or something, and suddenly everybody had to leave the town, go out and dig for your food.
The Khmer Rouge.
The Khmer Rouge. And all of a sudden, they didn't know how to dig. They didn't know how to grow food. And the little kids start crying, and they'd say, "I don't know how to do this." The guard would come up and shoot them in the head. Anybody else want to cry? So really horrible situation. Came to this country, didn't speak the language, escaped, got here for some religious group, brought them in, the boat people, and they started collecting boxes and cardboard. Their dad had been a doctor in Cambodia, and they're just living this hand-to-mouth existence. But they had hope. They hung in there.
Yes.
And now they own tons of little liquor stores and restaurants and bars like the one I was buying. So here's the point. They looked at me and they said, "You look at we look at you and we don't understand." I said, "You mean us Americans here?" I said, "Yeah.
Right.
We came here and we see gold laying
Right.
all over, and we think you either don't see it or you're too lazy to bend over and pick it up."
Right.
And I never forgot that analogy. So the gold, I can't see the gold. Where's the gold? But to them, this was like, oh my God, the land of opportunity. And they were willing to bend over, which means bending your back. And
Yes.
maybe it hurts a little bit to bend over and pick up this stuff that we walk right by, the penny on the pavement. That's another one I always ask people. If you see a penny on the pavement, what would you lean over and pick up? A penny?
I can't tell you how many ounces of silver that I have bought, that I've purchased over the years by looking down and seeing a penny or a nickel or
Yeah,
a dime or a quarter on the pavement.
Right.
Because I would take it and I put it in a jar. True story. I'm not making this up. It's ironic that you would even say that,
Yeah.
because again, I pick it up. I pick it up, and again, when the jar gets a certain amount, I take it and I purchase silver with it.
And I've seen people all the time walk right over money. And I sometimes think to myself, how much does it have to be there? $1, $10, $20? And, a nickel, a dime, even a quarter, not worth it. Not worth bending over to pick it up.
But here's the thing. I like that metaphor because life is the same way.
Right.
It's like, let's say you want to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
You want to lose 20, 30, 40 pounds.
Okay.
Okay. That same analogy of the penny that you won't bend down and pick up, it's the same metaphor that you can use for losing weight. Why? Because let's say you work out today and then you eat a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
You take a few more steps. And all of a sudden you're doing this on a daily basis, whereas you can't see the change immediately. And sometimes it doesn't even it's like it's not even worth going out and walking these extra steps. But the longer you do it, the more consistency you put into it, and it becomes a habit. Now all of a sudden your friends are looking at you and saying, "Hey, something's different about you. Have you lost weight?"
Yeah. Yeah. We had another guest in here a while ago. You're making me think of a guy, very famous in Orange County here, really colorful character, Wing Lam. Wing Lam started Yahoo Fish Taco, he and his brother and his family. And his parents had a Chinese restaurant, I think, on the peninsula or Balboa or someplace in Newport or whatever.
Okay.
A small one, not a big restaurant. So they had some background. And he and his buddies were surfers, and they saw people eating fish tacos in surf places, so they started as kind of a gag. And then one turned to two, and then suddenly they got hundreds of them. It's a multi-million-dollar corporation. Here's his point. To the day they died, he said his parents would still stop, and because they were poor immigrants had come over,
Right.
they would pick up a bottle if they saw it, plastic bottle. And he was like, "Dad, you're embarrassing me. I got lots of money. Just leave the frickin' bottle on the thing there." And he'd look at him shocked like, "Why?"
Because here's the thing. I like the way you said that, Because the thing that got you there is the thing that you need to continue to do.
Yes, that's what
Yes.
the Father's looking at him like. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I haven't changed.
I haven't changed. We got more money in the bank, but I haven't changed.
But again, people assume or they think that once they get to a certain level, they got to stop doing what created their success.
That's a good point too, right?
I'll tell you a story. This guy had this old truck, beat up truck, and he had his high school sweetheart, and they would drive down to the levee, and sit there, and he'd have his arm around her, and they'd just sit there for a while, and they would just talk.
Right.
They love, just something that they did.
Right.
Well, high school sweetheart. Fast forward, they end up getting married, and over the years, they continue to go down to the levee. But as the marriage went from 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, when they first started going, she was right under his arm.
Mm-hmm.
But as the years went by, they would go to the levee, and she's on her side of the truck,
Yeah,
and he's
right.
on his side of the truck.
Exactly.
So one day, as they were driving to the levee, and she had her arm on the door, she was reminiscing about when they first met as high school sweethearts. And she said, honey, it would be nice if we could go back to where things used to be, where we would drive down to the levee and have a great time. And he looked over at his wife and said, well, honey, I haven't moved. Because he's driving the truck.
Yeah, right.
But over the years, she went closer and closer and closer to the door.
Yeah.
And he had to remind her, I didn't move.
Wow. We're all live life like that. And all of those stories, will we see the opportunity and seize it? Will we stop doing what we did when we're successful? Will we be caught up in the old and not look at the new? All of these things are about building and about holding on to something and then building upon it. Talk about it.
But here's the thing, though. What I want to interject is people get so caught up on goals and being goal oriented.
Right.
Well, a goal is, you need to know where you want to go, but once you've established where you want to go, you need to have a system in place that's going to get you there.
Yeah, right.
And that's where people miss it. They don't have a system in place that's going to get them to their goal. Because once with the right system, and matter of fact, I talk about this. I have information posted at my website, tyronefrench.com. With the right system, you don't have to worry about the system. The system will take care of itself. It's maintained. Its function, its purpose is to drive you through from point A to point B to point C.
You're saying the word drive, so is this like a road to get there?
Well, look at a vehicle. When you're talking about financial investments,
A financial vehicle. Right?
It's a financial vehicle. So a vehicle.
We got to get you on the mic there. You're getting excited and going away from the
yes,
mic.
it's a vehicle. So same thing with your car.
Right.
Let's say if you want to. We're in Orange County right now. Or we're in Irvine right now. But let's say if you wanted to go to L.A. How are you going to get to L.A.? That question is answered based on how fast you want to get there.
Right.
Or just like, let's say if you want to go to New York. And that's the goal. The goal is to get to New York. But how fast do you want to get there based on the vehicle?
And imagine 100 years ago, there was no path to get there. So you had to figure out, you had to make your own path. You had to cut your own path. Now, the systems are in place. You just have to use them.
But here's my point. Depending on asking that question, how fast do I want to get there based on time? Let's say if you're in California, you need to get to New York, and there's you got a business meeting or a funeral or something, and you got to get there overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Now you can't drive.
No.
Can't take a bus. So what is your option? A plane.
Right.
So now based on the plane, what carrier do you want to use?
How many stops you want to make? How much money you want to spend?
You want to go nonstop, or how many stops you want to make during the trip? How much do you want to pay based on resources? So again, when you ask yourself the right questions based on, you have a goal, but from that goal, now you're looking at systems.
I see people all the time who tell me they have a goal, a dream, but they don't have any realistic way of making it happen. I want to be rich. I want to own a home. I want a better job. I want this, whatever I want. I dream about it. I fantasize about it. I say, well, what steps are you taking? What, again, path are you moving forward in that direction? You got to have you figured out the steps it takes? I got to do this to this to this to this, and then I get there. And they go, no, I just want to get there.
But in a capitalistic society, we're conditioned to want to be rich,
Yeah. Well,
wealthy.
it's in our face all the time.
Yeah. So the goal is to make more money. I want to make more money.
Right.
But what are you going to do in order to make that money? And so you begin to look around and see other people having the things that you wish you had,
Right.
which is the car, the house, the lifestyle, dressing a certain way, taking vacations.
Right.
And you start thinking, I wish I had more money so I could do those things. No. What you want is the same system that this person has that produced or manifests those things, because you're looking at the manifestation, but
Right.
what you're not doing, you're not looking at what caused it.
Right.
And that's the disconnect between society, based on looking at the effect and not the cause. So there, again, that goes back to tearing down instead of building up, because the goal is the tearing down, because it took certain assets and resources in order to make that thing happen. What system am I building up
Yeah.
to get to that point?
And I get that tearing down sometimes is useful. I got to tear down my old paradigm, my old way of thinking. I got to tear down the barriers that I think are blocking me from doing that. Some of it's a
You have
mental
to.
tear down. So there's some tear downs you got to do. And once
Right.
in a while, you got to reboot, and you got to restart, and you got to rethink. But if you do it without a plan in place, what comes next?
Pain.
Nothing comes next.
It's just pain.
Yeah.
It's just pain with no momentum, that has no direction, no drive.
I always thought, and again, maybe this is what we're watching in LA here, riots again here. And it's like, oh my God, that always shocks people and scares people. And I get the impulse. I'm just mad. I'm going to burn something. I'm going to break something. I'm going to throw something. But without a plan in place, it's just like throwing a tantrum. It doesn't produce anything.
That to me, that wasn't a riot. It was, like you said, it was people acting out.
Right.
It was a crowd. The mob
Right.
made some bad decisions, and all of a sudden, based on you being a part of that crowd mentality or psychology,
You get caught up.
You get caught up in it. But the minute things started to dissipate, it went back to not just looking at as far as civil unrest, but people began to exercise their Constitution, First Amendment
And
rights
that seemed to be more
to
productive,
protest.
because now they're trying to make a point to change something, not just act out.
Exactly. And here's the thing, though. Man, I'm an American. I served in the military
Twice.
two
Two different.
I love this country, and I love what that flag represents. My only suggestion is that if we're Americans and this is to me, this is the land of opportunity. This is a land that has blessed me and my family beyond measure, and with no ceiling.
No ceiling.
No ceiling. As a protester, if I'm out in the street, I have an American flag.
I agree.
That, because again, what
Not protesting against, you're protesting for.
I'm protesting for.
Right.
So here's the thing: if I'm protesting for, as a veteran, and I have my American flag with me, do you know what kind of optic that would generate to have the National Guard or the police or the Marines attacking me for exercising my First Amendment constitutional right to assemble
As
peacefully?
opposed to I'm masked up and I've got a tear gas I'm throwing, and I look like an angry, scary other, that needs to be stopped, as opposed to I'm your brother.
Because here's the thing, we're all foreigners.
Yeah, well, other than the teeny tiny little piece of Native Americans that we're here to begin with, yeah, we're all came from somewhere
The only
else.
reason we have that teeny tiny sub-segment is because they were killed.
They were killed. They were killed and driven off their own
It was
land.
a genocide.
Right.
So again, everybody that came to this country that's here now came from someplace else.
Yeah.
Again, unless you were native to this land, and it's not very many of them.
No.
So we need to learn how to coexist with one another.
And I thought that's what made America great, is that we put that Statue of Liberty doesn't say, give me your rich, give me your few, give me your privilege. This is give me your tired masses yearning to be free. Give me the bottom of the barrel. Give me what everybody else doesn't want, and let's see if we can make something out of here.
You know what that says to me? Give me somebody that's hungry.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm not talking about a physical hungry where you didn't
a desire,
a desire with a burning desire
Right.
to want to succeed, and that's what immigrants brought to this country,
and still do to this day.
do to this day.
Yeah.
This
story I shared. They came with nothing, and the classic American story came with nothing, and were willing to do everything to get it.
Here's the thing: I don't see anybody as illegal. Now you may be undocumented.
Right.
And maybe you came in to get some type of asylum or something like that. But again, there's a process that you go through.
Right.
But here's the thing, based on the unfairness that I see. You'll try to deport a lot of these people that are undocumented, that are working on these jobs. And what they'll do is they'll raid these jobs, these work sites. But no one ever talks about the employer.
Yeah.
No, think about don't do this. No one ever talks about the employer that's hiring undocumented workers for a lower wage.
Right.
Nobody talks about it. But so Paul,
they get
the
arrested.
unfairness is baked into this process.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, and I we could go into politics. I know you don't want to go into that, but I think we share similar views here. I say what's wrong with this country isn't that we're a collection of people. That's what's right with this country.
That's what's right with it. And but again, diversity is becoming a bad word.
Oh, you can. They're taking down every image of diversity they can to any suggestion of it. Black people, brown people, green people, purple people, gay people, anything that symbolize that we're not just one, we're many colors, we're many fabrics, we're many people all together under a shared idea.
But here's the thing. It's a distraction.
And that's what you say.
And I just want people to understand that's a distraction. Right. As long as you understand based on you got a desire, you got a plan, you got a vehicle, you got a goal. Stick to the plan. Don't get thrown off based on what you see externally. Don't let all this stuff stop you from doing and being the person that you're here to do and to be.
Right.
Don't do it. Stay focused.
And many times I feel like why all of a sudden, I'm not a big fan of the current president. Everybody knows that. I'll just disclaim that up front here. But it seems like all this other negative stuff was happening, tariffs and trade and war and everything. And all of a sudden, like, well, let's look over here. Let's send in federal troops fully armed in battle gear and let's see what that does. Well, that provokes a reaction. And then that's what we're focused on here. Is that a distraction or is that the real action?
But again,
or you can use lots of examples of this. Yeah.
For me, it doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter who's running around the halls of Congress. To me, it doesn't even matter who's on the Supreme Court. There are laws that are already on the books.
Yeah.
Based on, there's a tax code. There are city codes as far as, starting a business and doing things a certain way. Those things haven't changed. They haven't changed. And so, again, if you're thinking about your legacy from generation to generation, these are hiccups. You continue to do the thing that you need to do, continue to build to get from point A to point B to point C. If you get distracted and you stop, you're just following the crowd. You become a part of the mob. Let me give you a point. Again, you got a goal. You're moving towards that goal. All of a sudden, you get distracted. Now, instead of going straight forward, now you're veering off to the left or to the right.
Right.
And all of a sudden, something else will pop up. You veer off to the right again. Now you're a 45-degree angle from your goal. You veer off again. You keep veering off to now you're 90 degrees. Now you're 180. Now you're going backwards.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So you have a choice whether or not you want to stay on your same heading to do the things that you need to do to push your family, your community to that next level. We only have so much time to do it.
Can you still build if everybody's tearing down?
Absolutely. It's one of the best times to build.
You've always talked about that. Like you say, you just smile and you say, okay, like, there's a recession coming or there's this and something. And sometimes you say, there are people out there just licking their chops saying, I'm ready for this. This is be
That's the
good for
clearance
me.
sale. That's when the clearance sale.
That's when the clearance sale's coming.
People look at inflation. They talk about how bad inflation is. Well, for who? Because if prices are going up and I'm selling those things where prices are going up, I'm making more money.
Yeah, you got more assets, they're worth more.
And again, overnight. But here's another thing. If you just look at the housing market,
Right.
and people look at property values, and the property values are going up, and you would assume that that's a good thing. It's a good thing if you can afford it. And let me tell you why. You back in the 70s, you bought this house, and this house was worth $30,000.
Right.
Fast forward today, 2025, the house is worth $700,000, $800,000.
Right.
What's happening is that people cannot afford their property taxes. If you can afford your property taxes, no big deal.
Right. Well, that was the whole idea of Prop 13, because for a long time, property taxes would have dramatically gone up, and people were being forced out. My house went up, and I can't afford the increased tax, so now they have caps and limits, and it can go up a little bit, but doesn't go up as fast as it would have if we had capped those things. That was a problem that was pushing particularly older people out of their
But
homes.
here's the thing. As you get older and your income stream changes, and now you're not, you're probably dependent on one income. And let's say now you have health issues, and then a lot of your income now is going, and your reserve is going towards medications and things like co-payments, more insurance. So if you have that finite income and you don't have as much discretionary income as you had, then even though that property tax is capped, sometimes it's still insurmountable.
Yeah. What scares me as I look ahead in my late 60s here is I can see already the horizon. Income will go down. I stop working or work less or can't work as much or can't get the same jobs I used to because I'm too old or too tired. Or all that just seems like an inevitable decline. You don't make more to the day you die. Most of us, some do. And at the same time, my medical expenses could go through the roof. The majority of money you spend in medicine and Medicaid and surgeries in the last 10, 20 years of your life.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you're
That scares me.
If you're taking a trip from Irvine to San Diego,
Okay.
when you want to make sure that you got enough gas to get there,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with your finances. So stuff happens, but you put yourself in a position to where you have a reserve or something that you can draw from. Some people do it with their homes. Some people do it with their business.
Right.
But
You always talk about multiple sources of income.
multiple sources of income. But again,
Right.
people get caught up in thinking that my job, this is my source of income, and I'm never going to lose this source of income until they get laid off or something happens.
Right.
And then there's no reserve, and then they didn't really plan for retirement. So that, again, there's not another income source there to draw from. So now again, circumstances are dictating what kind of life you're going to have. All I'm saying is that in the United States of America, you have other options to where you can create multiple streams of income when you're younger, and you don't have to worry about running out of money. The same problem that other people have.
I wish I had, because that's my number one fear as I get older. I'm going to run out of money.
Here's the thing, though. I look at it like going to the museum. You have a choice of what picture you're going to look at when you go into the museum.
I go this room or that room.
Yeah. So some people want to go to the horror,
Right.
and look at that and say, "Wow, that's
Or like the
scary."
movieplex. I can go into this theater and watch the scary movie, or I can watch the romantic comedy over here.
But it's still a choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's still a choice. And again, every single day we have a choice based on our finances. What life? How do we want our lives to look later on down the road?
Well, the choice I hear everybody right now, for everybody listening to this, you have a choice whether you're going to continue to listen to this and come back, and you have a choice whether you're going to pick up the phone and dial what?
877-296-5192.
It's that simple. You got a phone. Everybody's holding a phone right now. There isn't anybody listening to this that doesn't have a phone within reach.
Hey, if you got a phone with you right now, actually, what I want you to do is text Tyrone French to 36260 and download that free app. As a matter of fact, at that app, you can listen to every podcast episode that we've ever recorded.
There you go.
And
At your fingertips.
But when you call that number, 877-296-5192, it's a recorded message. So you don't have to worry about somebody picking up the phone and you having a conversation. Just, leave your thoughts, leave a message, and hopefully, maybe I'll listen to that message and we'll have a conversation about, what you left, what you were concerned about on the show. Paul and I will have a discussion.
One of the crazy things was more when I was in real radio a million years ago. We would just talk and it would go into the ether, didn't go into the ether net, just went out into the air. And many times you're like, is anybody out there? It's nice to get some feedback.
It is. Especially even if it's negative.
Even as negative, somebody's listening. We're touching a chord. We're reaching somebody here. So often we're like, we all look at each other. We can look at numbers, we can see stats, and we can see statistics, but are we really touching anybody out there? It would be nice to know.
We're not giving out financial advice or psychological advice. This show is for entertainment and educational purposes only. But again, what we're gonna do is make you think.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully, make you look at your situation and say, how can I do this better? And if you know that you can't do it by yourself, if you know you need help, you have a resource that you can reach out to.
And what's that number again?
877-296-5192.
There is a resource.
It's a resource. And again, if you don't
must be an expensive resource.
If you don't want to call,
can't be free.
Just, go to the website. go to TyroneFrench.com.
Free.
A free app, free mobile app, free.
Well, I love that you come in here and freely give these ideas to all of us here. It makes me think. I wish I had thought of these things earlier, and I still wish I would act on them more. I tend to get buried under my own beliefs that I'm too old, it's too late, I can't, I won't, somebody else will. And it's that keeps me worried late at night. It'd be nice to let all that go.
Well, again, I enjoy us having these conversations, but I guess, over the years, you've kind of settled down a little bit.
Settled down.
Things is not as gloomy as they used to look.
No, I'm seeing a little more positive signs. I believe in a little more here, because it is. You are a product of what you believe.
Well, again, I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate and blessed to live in the United States of America, where one day I decided that I wanted to change my life, and I had the opportunity to do it. And you know what's changed from that 45 years ago when I joined the military to today?
What?
Nothing. That optimism is still there.
And I someday we're going to do a show, not this show. I want to know where that optimism comes from, because I've heard your backstory. We've all heard your backstory. It was a hard road to go.
It was.
You grew up in
South Central LA.
Central LA. That immediately goes, wow. And you could have easily been bitter. You could have easily been caught up. You could have easily gone down the wrong road. You could have easily been negative.
I attribute this to my mother, though. I have a praying mother. And I got to tell this story. One time I went to a friend of mine's house party. And I know we only got a few minutes, so I'm not going to get into all the details. But I went to the house party. My mother was like, she was, Tyrone, I don't feel led to let you go to this party tonight.
Right.
And my friend was going to the military. Matter of fact, I had two friends that were going to the military. They were going in under the buddy system. And I told her, Mom, I need to go to this party. I got to go, and
I got to be there, Mom.
I put up a fuss. Well, fast forward, we go to the party, and all of a sudden the house party gets shot up. And
literally
shot up. And
Yikes.
one of the guys, he couldn't go to the Marine Corps because he got shot.
I'm sorry to laugh, but wow.
But true, South Central LA, true story. So I go home, and my mother is up waiting for me when I get home. I open up the door, and I walk in, and there's blood. I'm covered in blood.
Oh, man.
Didn't get shot, but I'm covered in blood.
Yeah.
One side of my body. And my mother looked at me, and I told her, first thing I had to tell her, no, I'm fine, I'm okay. I told her what happened. But the first thing she said was, Lord, I thank you.
Wow.
Lord, I thank you. So there
Wow.
is something to having a praying mom.
Yeah. Well, I pray that people listening out there will think of who's praying for them, and we're praying for you, and we hope that we pray you come back and continue the conversation, because I get the sense you really do care for these people.
Well, here's the thing. I just want people to know that, I do care about people, and I care about their livelihood and them being being the best version of themselves that they could possibly be. And that's what this show is about. It's just giving and helping people to reach their full potential. And again, I'm just going to sign off and say that I just want people out there to know that Tyrone French is closing the wealth gap.
That's our show for this week. Closing the Wealth Gap. The one show, the only show that shows you how to take control of your financial future. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.